out of the way at an appropriate time. What I'm going to be trying to do today, I'm talking about window of opportunity, and I'll explain that as we go through. But it's basically the agenda is where we're heading, where can the industry find new opportunities, what part will solar play in meeting the energy shortages, predictions, next steps, etc., etc. And there's a list of the things that I'm up to at the moment. So, just a reminder, in effect, that solar subsidies, years ago, 25 years ago, now 30 years ago, used to go around the world lobbying various governments to put subsidies in to create a solar industry. And we knew that there was no one country big enough to do it. Basically, we needed lots of countries to get behind it, to get to the scale of driving down the price to make it affordable. So lots of countries ended up doing it. Germany and Japan led the way, and then others followed suit. But in effect, we're now getting very close to grid parity, which has always been the dream. So if you see what the ministers are now talking about, the ministers are talking about grid parity before 2020, i.e. in the next term of Parliament. So whoever wins the election gets the benefit of having brought solar through. Just going through the subsidies as they stand at this point in time. FIT 1, what we have at the moment, continues on to 2015, and it's got that normal capacity trigger mechanism. FIT 2 will be announced, to be honest, after the election, and it will just continue on until we get to grid parity. ROCs, as you know, have now been limited to 5 megawatts, but they continue on up to 5 megawatts to the 31st of March 2017. CFDs, first round, lots of talk about it, but quite frankly nobody understands it. So put your applications in and let's talk about it after the results come out, because that's the only way anybody will know what's going to happen with CFDs. Community solar, lots been talked about that. We're awaiting details, and there's lots of discussion going on at this point in time. I would say that government have got to be careful with budgets, but we all know the budgets are a little bit woolly in terms of where the monies go, etc., etc. But we'll play around with that with them. And like I say, as soon as we get to grid parity, we're away from subsidies. We might be on tax breaks or other things, but we would be on subsidies once we get there. So what the government would prefer as far as the solar strategy moving forward is solar on roofs, domestic and commercial, solar on previously used land, ex-industrial, brownfield, waste sites, etc., etc. Solar with community involvement, that opens the door for other things as well. And solar now on government and state. I'll come on to government and state in a moment, but it's roughly 50-50 going on to land as against buildings. What the government are trying to do to assist the industry is working with DCLG on planning changes, probably going to be deemed instead of the 50 kilowatts up to 1 megawatt. Solar system could well be transferred from one building up to the other and still keep your feed-in tariff. There's a consultation to do that. The good news is the DNO, who 8 years ago, they work in 8-year cycles, 8 years ago solar didn't exist on the horizon of what was going to be going onto the grid, so they didn't allow for it. Now the new 8-year programme has started and its solar is included. So a lot of the barriers, obstacles, at least are going to be taken care of by the DNO funded programme. Ofgem have now approved the spend, so you'll see things start to improve as time goes by. There's other barriers that are perceived barriers to deployment which are being addressed at the moment as well, little things. But the Minister held a round table with all the big commercial customers, the big building owners, their lawyers, etc., trying to move them forward to put solar on the buildings. You'll probably know there's a lot of building programmes about to hit the ground as well. So it's quite interesting times. UK deployment. The market is continuing to grow. You can see by the size of this event, it's much bigger than last year. Been round this morning, everybody seems happy. So correct us if I'm wrong. The split to date, it keeps varying, but it's roughly that's been put out there is on domestic, 46% on land and 26% on commercial and other things. As a market, we have to adapt all the time as the subsidies change, because the prices continue to change on solar and keep catching the government out. So module prices are coming down slowly, but a bit constrained by the EU anti-dumping at this point in time. Inverter prices seem to be moving down slowly as well, or coming down in the right direction. And the market for new builds seems to at long last be starting to happen as well, where people are realising that solar can help them reach the various code standards, and they know we're heading for zero carbon buildings. What I would say is that lowering the installed price, using components which have come down in price, etc., it's nothing to do with cutting quality or sort of ignoring health and safety. And we saw an accident this morning which delayed the entrance, so we've got to be careful on those aspects. That harms industry. So anyone thinks that, you know, cutting prices is just cowboy land, you know, please leave this industry. We don't want it. It's interesting that solar started in the sunniest areas of the country, the southwest of England, and then moved north, and now it's covering everywhere. So solar fields even are getting built in Scotland. Never ever expected from a government point of view. So my view on where we are is the fact that the solar strategy got adjusted so many times it's unbelievable. But the final number was, you know, around about 12 megawatt by 2020. DEC knows that solar always exceeds their predictions in any case, so even they expected to be higher. I don't know whether you saw the announcement a week or two back where DEC said it's about 4.2 gigawatt deployed now, and that's what's on their system, and that's what they've got to use. In fact, their processes can't keep up with solar. There's probably around about 5.5 gigawatt deployed, and we're heading towards 8 gigawatt by March next year. Now that figure will vary depending on supply and all the other things, but it's of that sort of order. If you look around at what's going to happen next year, there's a number of projects are penciled in to be done before March 2016, which is probably the earliest time anything can change, even if we have a new government or whatever. So there's about that 3 gigawatt to add to that. So in effect, we're getting close to what the prediction for the solar strategy by 2020 is, and we'll get there in 2016. So my personal view is the industry's not going to stop then. And yeah, there's a few obstacles in the way, like grid and things like this, but there's now ways around things, and I can see we're reaching 20 gigawatt at least by 2020. So we've got an election. What's going to happen in the short term? We've got an election on the 5th of May. It's unlikely there'll be any further changes to anything before the 5th of May that's relevant to growth back in industry or whatever. Even after we get a new government, it's going to take them at least 9 months to go through changing any rules, even if they wanted to stop solar, which they won't. So there's a window of opportunity, I'm saying, at least April 2016, where what we have set out at the moment is virtually cast in stone. So just plan on just getting on with it and watch what happens at the election. But like I say, it'll take time to come through. The European anti-dumping MIP more than likely will come off in December 2015. And if it does, if you take pricing today, world pricing, our constraint is on big orders is about 42 pence today. It will be about 33 pence. So that's the step change that will happen as a result of the tariffs coming off. The new government also faces a big problem, because after the election, that's when it's all predicted by Ofgem we're going to have blackouts or risk of blackouts, etc. And they've got to do some deals to keep the lights on, and those deals will cost money, and that money will add it to electricity prices. So the likelihood is that prices will continue to grow. You saw the other day that the nuclear deal at Hinkley has been announced or approved by Europe. But it was funny because when it went in, it was 8.2p, and when it came out, it was 9p a kilowatt hour. So it's even better. You know, that's going to be the price of electricity 2023. So, you know, I know they talk about other things, but just ignore it. In terms of the UK, some of the opportunities are the fact that the systems work significantly better than what we allowed for. So generally, most systems are working about 15% above what was predicted, what we thought was happening. Of course, this from a government point of view means to pay out even more, another 15% monies. But in effect, what we're trying to do is, in order to remap the UK, we're working with the Met Office to take data from some of the solar fields which are out there, work it back from light levels that have been recorded, that the Met Office have, and then work backwards in time to where light levels have been for the last 10 years, 15 years, to try to predict what is the map for the future. If we can do that, that will help the funders to then use a higher number than what they presently do. Obviously, there's a big opportunity on large commercial roofs because this is what the government are pushing, and they want to see those roofs covered with solar. There's all sorts of issues in dealing with large roofs, of course. They've always got bits of equipment, roof lights, you name it up there. So it's really understanding, how you do some of these large roofs and don't get into problems. So the National Solar Centre are busy putting together a good practice guide to try to steer people through some of that mire. The same thing on small buildings, whether it's domestic or whether it's larger than domestic. Those with a pitched roof, there is a little bit concern that some of the installs don't look particularly nice. They've tried to cram as many modules on the roof as possible, and they've overlapped the roof, overlapped the ridge, you name it, they've done it, sort of thing. So we're trying to make certain that as an industry we're starting to get our act together and make things look appropriate, look nice. And again, there'll be a guidance document to help that. Ground-mounted solar, like I said, the government would prefer previously used land. However, it's up to the local planners, it's up to the local communities where you put it. So government can't influence that, although Pickles can call things in, as we've seen, but he's heading to the election as well, so I don't think we'll be very busy calling anything more in at the moment. I know the results of the GR are coming out on Friday, so that may give a shock as well. But I think the key to large fields is basically we've got to continue to look after those sites, make certain that they're nice, don't get any bad reputation because that will affect markets in the future. The guidance documents were brought out on planning, biodiversity and agriculture all help to educate both the customers, the planning authorities, the local authorities, etc. So use them where appropriate. There's nothing to stop building fields. Oops, sorry. I slipped this one in because it was always the case whereby in the UK it was pointless having a tracker, we don't get enough direct sunshine, etc., etc. All I would say is, it might be that in view of the fact that the country's got better weather than what we expected, or it's better performance, it might be in certain areas trackers are appropriate. Now, I found these ones the other day, and they're in Northumberland, right, the top end in the UK sort of thing, or the top end of England. So I'm sure that they would work a lot better than the south coast. So it's watch what's happening with industry. Go around this event and see some of the new products coming out, the more efficient modules, the various other techniques. Because by diversifying, we'll get through this next few years. Opportunities in terms of using car parks. Huge areas of land is used by car parking. Right? If you take a typical store, one of the retail stores, the car park is 50% bigger than what the store is. So it's a great area, rather than climb up on the roof, to put a canopy over the car park. And of course, that would be classed as a building, so if you want to use rocks, it would be classed as a building, so you get 1.6 rocks at the moment. So some of the ideas of just, basically covering parking spaces, or even covering complete aisles at the same time. Use the maximum area you can, and use that as a way of doing it. Because you can prefabricate things, because the supports are fairly slender, you don't affect car parking spaces. If it had 10,000 spaces on tier 1, you put a canopy on, it would still have 10,000 spaces. That's all the customer's worried about. So, it's a good market. There's been lots of talk about the grid and National Grid saying there's a maximum of 10 gigawatt can go onto the grid and things like this. But There's also a lot of misunderstanding about our grid, how on earth it works, what are the issues, what are these things that they talk about called faults, thermal issues, voltage things. You know, even the DNOs are learning at the moment on what solar's really doing on the grid compared with what they expected. So again, there's a document being written to try to steer people through that, try to make certain you understand from day one. Don't waste DNO's time with going with the right bits of info, etc. Government estate, you saw an announcement not long ago where government want to put 1 gigawatt on the government estate. The first phase of that is about 500 megawatt, and of course when you're talking government you've got to talk in a totally different way in terms of they can't have any problems. So they don't want any problems, issues that hit the press. We've got to have quality systems. You can't have things whereby 2 years later the supplier went out of business or whatever, otherwise they'll be criticised. Obviously there can't be any accidents. HSE must be taken into account. Must comply with all the regulatory rules and regulations. You've got eyes watching you all the time on government estate sites. And of course they're after the best generation output, but at the best price, but at the same time still maintaining quality. We can't have cheap, we can't have those problems. So they must have fully warranted products, and it must be a full monitoring system of O&M. They've got to be looked after, they've got to continue to perform for the next 25 years at least. So phase 1 will be about 250 megawatt on buildings and 250 megawatt on what they are called brownfields, previously used land. Most of government estate is previously used, whether it's MOD, DEFRA or other sites. The projects will vary in size and they'll be spread nationwide. It won't be just 1 or 2 big projects and one person appointed to do them all. The whole idea of it is to do it in the regions and make certain that everyone benefits. The standards are being written to raise the bar to ensure that we don't end up with the wrong information or the wrong products or whatever. And all installers will have to go through an appropriate training course, which is being developed at the moment. The idea is that you'll end up with a certificate or a card, and that only those people with a card will be allowed on your government estate site to work. So you won't be able to subcontract to people who have never done solar or whatever. It's a way of ensuring the quality. All products need to be specified and addressed in terms of quality and warranty. So it'll be like, you know, the way the banks operate with their so-called whitelist or something similar. O&M requirements, like I say, must be for 25 years. And the Cabinet Office want the legacy to be that they've raised the bar in terms of solar, got around some of the issues that we've had in the past, and that those issues, or that raising of the bar and setting new standards will then be used by the public sector, the local authorities, etc. in the future. It's trying to help the industry move on to a sustainable future. As part of that, we'll take the opportunity of doing a few demonstrations on government estate and play around with various technologies, anything that's new, things that come out, etc. Let's test them on government estate. And likewise, as part of that, we'll also be playing around with storage, because you know, storage is about to happen. We're coming to this, but government estate needs to understand storage as well. May well have some issues with their grid or whatever, and storage may be able to overcome it. So when you talk about storage, you know, storage is not about storing energy for months and months and months and then keeping it from the summer to the winter. It's basically storing it for a few hours from daytime to evening and dumping it back into the grid. So for the first time ever with storage, you know, there's lots of people that comment about solar that, you know, solar is great, but it doesn't keep the lights on, it doesn't work at nights, etc., etc. Storage allows you to do that. So this is the, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's like the holy grail of solar. Put the two things together and we've got a great future. If you look at what's happening in solar, and storage, it's very much like the solar industry. It's suddenly come along and then will grow at a very rapid rate in a multi-gigawatt type production. That will drive down the price, and that's the price on the right there that UBS predict the speed at which storage is going to come down. So there'll be different things, different markets that open first, but in effect, it's a market to get into. Go around the stands, there's lots of storage here. There's people that tell you how to make it work even today. What I would say is, it is very unlikely there'll be a subsidy for storage because they're sick of subsidies. What may happen is it might be classed as plant equipment, it might be attracted to enhanced capital allowances or something like that, and that will be the help. But if you've got solar on a building and you're already getting an export tariff, you still get the export tariff whether you store it or not. So again, it helps certain markets move forward. Rated solar installer, I'm trying to give advice to rated solar installer at the moment. When the MCS was developed, we didn't expect the market that we've got, right? It was developed whereby we'd have 50 megawatt the first year, 86 the second. By now, on the original program, we might have got towards about 500 megawatts. And in effect, we're at 5.5 gigawatts. So it's totally different to what we expected. So there's certain things in MCS that, had we known, they would have been different. But once you've got a process like this, it's awfully difficult to change it as well, right? So that's one of the things we struggle with. But you must comply with the MCS for the feed-in tariff up to 50 kilowatts, that continues. What we're trying to do though is give the customers the opportunity to get feedback, right? Because at the moment, people install things and you never hear from a customer again unless they write to a minister to complain it was a cowboy install or something similar. So trying to raise the bar by getting installers rated, so therefore you can see who are the good ones, who are the not so good ones that need to pull their socks up. It will be a way of helping the industry move forward. In terms of rated solar installer, it also provides insurance to the customer. So to provide insurance, you've got to have the right products with the right warranties, otherwise you don't get the insurance. So that's another thing that will help to raise the bar as well. Rated solar installers in its early days, it's just starting to come through, etc. We're still developing some of the ideas and such like, but it's about to happen. So, you know, give it a little bit of time, have a bit of think about it, have a talk to people about it. It may be appropriate for you, it may not be, but have a think. I mentioned the National Solar Centre and the guides that we've been producing. Watch that website because there's more guides going on all the time. They're free to download. And you know, we want to get as many out there and help the industry move forward. We're also busy with the IAT, writing the Solar Code of Practice, and that is out in draft form at the moment, so you can get access to it and provide comments to it. It's a much bigger document than we've ever had before because basically it covers everything from the tiny project right up to 50 megawatts. Where previously anything over 50 kilowatts wasn't really catered for with any sort of guidance or whatever. So things like guiding you to health and safety requirements, grid issues, all the rest of it, storage, it's all in this document. So please have a look, feedback as much as you can because we want to get it right. It will end up being a British standard in years to come, so we need to get it right from the start. There's various events going on to tell you about it, so look on the programme and find where they are. I'd just like to also say a big thank you to our industry partners. There's a number of companies got involved with us at the start to help us get going. We're using European monies as well, but you know, we want to work with everyone, so anyone who wants to join in, please get in touch. In terms of where the National Solar Centre is, it's in Eden, so if you ever want to go on holiday, it's the ideal place to go. You can arrange a discount hotel in the area through the NSC. You know, what better? So go on a Friday afternoon to see it and have the weekend there. I'm a little bit biased, you can tell. So the way forward, take advantage of the window of opportunity. Right, just get on and do things rather than thinking about or reading the press and such like. There'll be a lot in the press related to election.